the shadows they come, dropping from the darkness between the stars aboard craft like blades, slithering from the black of the deepest night. They are cruel and malevolent all. Torture and torment are the delights of these parasitic fiends. Their beauty and grace are terrible to behold, for they are of the most disturbing sort. They are the Drukhari, the denizens of the Dark City, and they step into reality as harbingers of suffering and ruin. Fear them, keep your weapons close. Beware the night, for that is their time. Be ever vigilant, lest the Drukhari drag you away from the Dark City in the realm beyond, and to a fate worse than death. In place of mere technology, they wield sciences so supernatural that they appear akin to eldritch sorcery. In place of souls, they have sucking voids of eternal malice that must be endlessly refilled by drinking in the pain, misery, and suffering of others. In place of gods, they have only themselves, set above all others in towering and perpetual arrogance, willing to reach any depth of depravity for their own delight. Pray. Oh, pray to whatever deity or pantheon you hold dear, so that the Drukhari never descend upon your world or hunt you in the darkest void. If that evil should befall you and there is no hope of escape, then pray or make ready, so that they do not take you alive. For to know the children of Comera is to know malice made manifest. Inquisition File, reference 418218X/DK. Ordo, Xenos. File, accept Xload, classified. Inquisitor, ID, redacted. From the word of the Holy Inquisition. The Drukhari of the 41st millennium exist as one of several surviving societies of the ancient Eldari race. Once masters of the galaxy, the Drukhari now are the manifestation of all that is sadistic, malevolent, vain, and hedonistic within their species. To be Drukhari is to be everything that failed the ancient Eldari race, and they revel in this reality. For it was that the ancient Eldari people were once a star-spanning empire. They would reach the zenith of physical, mental, technological, and spiritual progress. No foe could withstand their might. No toil would be required. All scarcity would be eliminated, and the Eldari would know no inconvenience, no struggle. They would reach the heights of what it meant to face the horrors of the galaxy and to conquer all adversity. And in this would lie the seeds of their ruin. All Drukhari face the seeds of a soul-sapping curse that would plague their people for time immemorial. The root of this curse lies in the downfall of their forebears. It would be that the ancient Eldari would reach a galactic epoch. Millennia would pass of galactic tranquility as the intellectual, psychic, and technological supremacy of the Eldari would be unmatched by any foe. Their empire would span the stars, and the mantle of responsibility to lead, to rule, the galaxy would be theirs, and theirs alone. The Eldari would traverse the galaxy with little difficulty. They would owe this to the Webway, a pocket dimension that allowed safe passage through the immaterium into real space. This marvel, at the behest of the Eldari, would allow sheltered and precipitous speed of interstellar travel throughout the known galaxy. Extraordinary cities would be built within the sub-dimensional realms of the Webway and upon maiden worlds, meticulously terraformed, featuring lush forests, crystal-clear lakes, and temperate climates, where all would know no adversity, all needs would be met, and the Eldari knew no strife. They were free to indulge in whatever curiosity, whatever desire, whatever pleasure they wished. The physiology of Eldari would allow lifespans far in excess of almost all other mortal races, and the Eldari would make use of this to its fullest extent. Art, science, philosophy, martial arts, and all other pleasures would be undertaken to their heart's desire. It is both blessing and curse that the Eldari psyche and emotional range is so vast. All gifted psychers used this as it was their way to obsess over their pursuits to nigh unimaginable levels to other species. They would experience pleasure and grief to levels scarcely believable to any other mortal race. With the passing of eons, the Eldari would fulfill every level of artistic, scientific, and martial pursuit conceivable, and so the only sphere unconquered would be that of pleasure. The Eldari would seek further unexplored areas of pleasure, succor, and hedonism. They would seek excess in all its forms. This decline would be insidious but deliberate. Over hundreds of years, the Eldari race would become consumed in the pursuit of sensory gratification, hedonistic impulse, and the formation of cults dedicated to pleasure in all its vices. The egotism and superciliousness would be unbounded. And in this arrogance, the Eldari thought naught for the consequences of their actions. It would be behind the veil of real space that the tides of the warp would tell a differing tale. The currents of the immaterium, once placid and even-tempered, would, over time, become vicious, ever-growing in intensity. The inexplicable excesses of the Eldari, coupled with their heightened emotions pushed to hysteria, combined with their unmatched psychic prowess, would flow in cavalcades into the immaterium and begin to coalesce. This entity would be the apotheosis of the unbridled lust, hedonism, arrogance, and moral decay of the Eldari people. This nascent deity would be content to grow in power as its unknowing patrons would feed it over millennia. The Eldari would continue to rely on the webway throughout this time. It would allow near instantaneous travel, trade, and growth of the empire despite immense interstellar distances. Entire fleets of Eldari voidcraft could utilize the labyrinthine tunnels of the webway to travel to every corner of the empire. And so it would be that as the empire grew in real space, so too would it within this subdimension. Of all the designs within the webway, none would match the splendor of Comora, the heart of the webway. It would see boundless wealth, bounty, and trade ushered across its void docks, spires, and roiling streets. The ancient city would lie in neutral territory for all within the empire, and so no one faction could lay claim to its wealth, prosperity, or martial reserve. This independence would usher in a sense of roguish abandon that would fester into something altogether more sinister in the Eldari fall toward damnation. Comora would be hearth and haven for those Eldari who coveted true excess, deviance, and hedonism. The pleasure cults would find refuge within lairs deep within the city and would become ever more debased. The hidden nature of the city, within the endless subrealms and pocket dimensions of the labyrinthine webway, made it ever the more perfect staging grounds for the growing cults of excess that were ever insidiously coming to dictate many facets of Eldari society. But it would be that those sects within what would later be the Dark City were in fact truly the most debased and vile of all. They would forego worship of the traditional Eldari pantheon for the desecrated and blasphemous Dark Muses. These sacrilegious figures would manifest in the dark virtues of arrogance, self-indulgence, spite, and viciousness. The masters of the pleasure cults, hidden within the veil of their lairs, would perform rites of incomparable depravity and horror even when compared to the cults within real space. They would mark their stained souls to levels from which there was no return. Within real space, the excess of the Eldari Empire would proliferate as catastrophe beckoned. Madness would seize the Eldari as they ushered ever forth toward calamity. Murder and massacre would stain the once exquisite streets of cities that had formerly given rise to knowledge and mental sanctity. They would now be gore-soaked hubs of depravity and terror. No flavor of excess was beyond reproach, no matter the physical or moral cost. Monolithic technologies once used for understanding, expansion, and uplifting of the Eldari people were turned to gruesome ends. Murder, debauchery, and terror filled the streets as tormented screams rang out from within. There would be those among the Eldari who foresaw the coming calamity, and the Exodites would retreat to the fringes of the Empire. The Asuriani would craft the gargantuan craft worlds and plot their course into the void, anticipating the collapse of their society, and that moral sanctity and asceticism would be their salvation. It would be in the span of a single heartbeat that the doom of the Eldari would be decided. Endowed by interminable indulgence and unrepentance, the apotheosis of the chaos god Slaanesh would rend the galaxy and the Eldari Empire in a cataclysmic, psychic scream. It would be with her first inhalation of real space that she would consume the souls of billions upon billions of petrified Eldari. Many Eldari fear this is also when the murder of the Eldari pantheon may have taken root, as Slaanesh slaughtered them in an saturnalia of metaphysical massacre. Whilst this apotheosis occurred within the warp itself, the devastation of her birth would leave the Eldari Empire and countless worlds torn asunder, and in its place, the Eye of Terror. In a singular moment, the near entirety of the Eldari Empire was extinguished. The remnants of this once mighty race reduced to fleeting survivors that upon death would find their souls greedily devoured by she who thirsts. The denizens of Comora would think themselves spared by the coming calamity. Despite the devastation that Slaanesh wrought upon the webway, Comora was well warded and would find itself relatively unharmed. It would be the Comorites who had been the absolute zenith of excess and hedonism that would be among the most immediately unaffected. They would think themselves above any guilt or sorrow, the birth of Slaanesh being a mere trifle, an inconvenience to those who called the Dark City home. They fell further into the trappings of the Dark Muses, now utterly convinced that their ancient pantheon were nothing but snivelling and weak, too inconsequential to survive the true aspirations of their people. These would be the first of the Drukhari and would now rush toward excess unabated. They would believe that they alone had escaped the fate of their species. They were wrong. The true horror of their people would be realized. The spiritual wound rent across all Drukhari, an inescapable curse that would take root within all denizens of the Dark City. It would be that the true horror would be from within. Inquisitor's Log. Designation: Ordo Xenos. Subject: the Drukhari. They are fear-made flesh, the truest and most unrepentant expression of evil that the galaxy has ever known. They are pirates and torturers, fiends and ghouls. Terror is their meat, agony their drink. To them, we are playthings and cattle. I am reminded of Inquisitor Theolos and his shadows through darkened glass. The Drukhari are the purest distillation of horror and depravity the galaxy has ever known. All within the Ordo know that to face the Tyrannid menace is to know death, the Necron, disintegration. But to face the Drukhari is to know the essence of absolute terror. They care not for any semblance of morality or even a need for our destruction. To them, we are the vestige of horror that nourishes their fall toward endless depravity and staves off the consumption of what remains of their soul. To know the Drukhari is to long for death, but to know only perpetual anguish. Your only hope, if you are taken, will be for the cold embrace of death. Voxlog. Kill Team Archimedes. There's a chamber up ahead. Cordred grates over the Vox. I hear the ever-present sound of human screaming grow subtly louder and louder and louder. I nod, feeling a leaden weight settle in the pit of my stomach. We are here. Kill Team Archimedes slowly crosses the threshold, emerging from a claustrophobic tunnel into a chamber whose vastness defies description. Emperor, protect us, the salamander whispers. What, in the name of the Emperor, are we looking at? Cordred grates. I feel anger, hot, aching to be released. I believe we have found the heart. The chamber is enormous, beyond enormous. It dwarfs the vaulted feasting halls of Kum-Kata as a warrior of the Ordu towers over a man. It stretches so far into the distance that my eyes cannot see its end, and reaches so high above that its upper reaches are lost in the alchemical fog. and the walls are lined with screaming humans. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them hang suspended in hideous Xenos torture cradles like the one in Anvam Command, choked by gurgling pipes, writhing machinery, and fiendish pain apparatus. But no, not thousands upon thousands, millions, millions upon millions. We found the inhabitants of Juvan Tertius. Cordred draws close to one of the cradles. The poor wretch within is a male, approximately of middle age, yet his form is an emaciated wreck, as though all of his muscle and fat has been rendered down while he still lives. The hideous tubing threading through the walls and sluice grates permeates his flesh as well, snaking into his bowels, up through his lungs, into his brain, and branching into every other orifice. His face is one of animal panic, the kind of agony that comes from suffering a mortal wound over and over and surviving it. I've fought the slaves of the dark gods. I've seen the cruelty they inflict on friend and foe firsthand, the Minotaur says. But this, I feel acid building in my mouth at the sight of such wanton debauchery, such wholesale viciousness. The Drukhari drink suffering as we drink air. I too have fought the servants of chaos. They inflict pain to please their gods. The Drukhari inflict pain to please themselves. Archimedes runs an Auspex scan from his gauntlet. This chamber is massive, but even it cannot account for the sheer bulk of the vessel we saw from the Contempt. A scout team of Drukhari rounds the corner. We find the element of surprise. These heretical Xenos, even the light of the Emperor must find it hard to reach us here. Even these Xenos structures imbibe all that is profane. With bolter and blade they cackle as they find their ignoble end. The viscous ichor of their blood drowning my blade. A moment's relief. No, I say grimly. This is one of many. The first filled. There are more, feeding a core. I can feel it. A core. The core of the weapon. The Drukhari, as is the birthright of all Eldari, are taller than the average human. Their limbs are longer and their frames are leaner. They possess unexpected strength for this frame and have striking and well-defined facial features. Many Drukhari oft have fair complexions and their ears sculpted to a point. It is their eyes that of all their features give window to their souls. The Drukhari, whilst capable of psychic might much like their kin, expressly forbids such use. To do so would be akin to a beacon to she who thirsts, of which the Drukhari can scarcely afford. Physiologically, the homeostasis, neurologic and muscular interlay of the Drukhari is as if expertly sculpted from clay. Their cardiovascular system exhibits higher heart rates with maintenance of appropriate pressures. Neurologically, they show both enhanced intellect, processing thoughts, possibilities and emotions beyond that of even genius-level intellect for other races. The Drukhari are singularly arrogant, egocentric and utterly sadistic. Their neurologic connections carry signals to their supple frames at lightning speed, allowing reflexes not seen in any others across the galaxy. Their immune, integumentary and respiratory systems act with greater efficiency, less waste, and more efficient cellular turnover. Due to this, the Drukhari are almost unaffected by the process of aging. Their physical, psychic, and mental vigor remains almost the same across the passage of centuries or millennia. In this way, Drukhari most often find their end in battle, as without being killed in this manner, the Drukhari can exist almost indefinitely, due to their impeccable physiology, if it were not for the terrible affliction that plagues all of their kind. This spiritual rend, following the birth of She Who Thirsts, has left all within Drukhari society, from the lowliest pauper to the almighty archons with a metaphysical wound. This wound leads the animus of their soul and its very essence to bleed slowly, but without pause, into the warp. It is within that their soul will be consumed by Slanesh, the chaos god of excess. The Drukhari, despite the millennia, have not lost that ingenuity that slowed the ascension of their species. They discovered, not a cure, but symptomatic relief to their ailment. In order to transfuse their lost essence back into their physical shell, they must act to continually savor the most extreme emotion. Whether it is unbearable agony, boundless torture, naked terror, each and every one is sustenance for the spiritual exsanguination of their species. Without, their physical form will progressively decline to match their spiritual infirmity before being violently torn into the warp to be greedily devoured by she who thirsts. The opposite is true for those Drukhari that are able to feast lavishly on suffering, torment, misery, and excess. They become infused with a sallow and superficial beauty, an aura of dark vitality. With each passing year, century, or millennia, Drukhari become more and more torturous, going to even more unspeakable extremes of excess, cruelty, and horror in order to stave off their metaphysical decline. Thus the Drukhari parasitize off the suffering and dread of the mortal races. They raid, pillage, and abduct, acting to bring back tithes of new victims to sate their ever-increasing spiritual appetites. Whilst other Drukhari or alien mercenaries upon Commorragh are certainly an option, it is those innocent and defenseless prey which provide the more metaphysical sustenance, as the Drukhari drink in the unabated dread and abject terror. These raids have continued for millennia to disparate worlds, void stations, and fleets within real space in order to fulfill their spiritual tithe. Drukhari have no goals or territorial conquest or ideologic advancement. They act only to drink in the fear of their prey as they fulfill their sense of superiority, increasing holds with loot and captives as they scream in terror all the while. The Dark City calls for ceaseless suffering, and the Drukhari must oblige. This incursion, does it threaten Commorragh? The apocalypse that unfolds will be the greatest disaster to our people since the fall. Divided, we shall be consumed in the fires of war. The Rana Dandra will not come to pass, and we shall all be doomed. So, yes, in the longer term, we all perish, Vect. One day, even you shall pass from the mortal plane. The doom that devoured our people. She who thirsts will never be sated, no matter how many other souls you feed to her. So I should hide myself away in one of your little magic stones, Jainzar. I should imprison myself in life and death, be a good slave as Azaman would teach us. Vect leaned over and said something to one of his functionaries. The Eldar disappeared into the subdued crowd, who listened to their lord's tirade with studied indifference or feigned admiration. Is that the grand plan to save our great people? To hide forever? To smother she who thirsts with the blanket of our deaths? I look upon the doom that we created, every cycle. I feel the gnaw of it, the lure of subservience, the promises of glory. I face it, accept the whole truth of what it is, and I fight. Am I a predator, feeding others to the beast that stalks me? Yes, and a scavenger too, for I will fling whatever morsel I find into that maw to keep it busy for a few more moments. Every heartbeat is precious to me, but do not think I am afraid of death. I've drawn more out of life than any other of our kind. And who are you to judge me, Phoenix Lord? Whose spirit did you last drink to resurrect this shell you call a body? From whose ashes did you rise this time? You are nothing, a spectre trapped in a suit. If Asaman had promised you this, you would not have followed. You would have fled into the webway with the rest of us, to live out whatever life you could prize from the dead grip of the galaxy. He became more and more agitated, voice rising in pitch, features contorted with aggression, though Jainzar felt that his rage was born from some other source than her presence. You are not immortal. You are dead. You think and move and fight, and there is nothing to you. A puppet of Cain's memory, strings twitched by the death gasps of Asurian. I live, I am truly immortal. Let the Prince of Pleasure court me. I do not need his favors. I have a city, a kingdom of countless souls to command. I can extinguish suns and destroy worlds. What do I care for the trinkets of power the great enemy dangles in front of me? Asdrubal Vecht, Supreme Overlord of Commorragh, Living Muse, Archon of the Cabal of the Black Heart, and father of Exodite dragons. Commorragh, also known as the Dark City, is a realm of nightmarish insanity. It is secreted away within the labyrinthine webway, a sub-dimensional construct expanding across the galaxy, separating real space from the immaterium and keeping safe its passengers from the dangers of both. The Dark City holds seething districts which blend Xenos architecture and lumen-lit hyper-technology with unnatural landscapes. It is made up of districts that extend over the galactic sprawl of webway subdimensions via portals. In this way, districts of the Dark City, whilst in so-called real space, are geographically linked while being hundreds or thousands of light years apart. The Dark City has grown over the eons, conquering disparate domains of previous sovereign Eldari cults and outcast bands. As each subdimensional realm has been subjugated, their portals are forced open and jealously guarded. These varying portals, sizing from doorways to those large enough for voidcraft, are oft controlled by cabals of the Dark City. The ability to dominate more of these gateways has been key to the power and dominion of these disparate groups. Commorragh is a labyrinth of limitless nightmare, its entwined districts resonating with screams of terror and weapons fire alike. Blades, spires, and oubliettes hum with schemes and designs. The satin tread of assassins, grind of torturers' blades, and drum of armored boots. Cries of pleasure, excess, and pain ring out from every street corner where the strong prosper and the weak are naught but prey and sustenance for the spiritual decay of the Drukhari. Organizations of the cabals, witch cults, homunculus coven, or mercenary companies are the only way to survive in the Dark City. The Drukhari make a mockery of the laws of physics. The Dark City is a realm beyond the physical, where arcane sciences lead to multiple dimensions, where they coalesce in incomprehensible amalgamations of bladed spire, interwoven biomes, and fractural multiplicity. The city is illuminated through its penumbral spires by black stars known as Ilmaya that lie above, imprisoned in subdimensions above Commorragh. These stars, extracted from real space prior to the fall, they are subject to the will of the Drukhari. The outlying regions of the city are known as Low Commorragh, trade districts, and port spires. Innumerable spike, speckled, and chain-wrought pirate strongholds, as well as spires of criminal syndicates, lie scattered throughout. Endless violence between criminal syndicates and pirate gangs take place as they eke out a depraved and minor existence for those too weak to make claim to regions within High Commorragh. It is the sprawls where the truly lost and desperate reside. The parched, those Drukhari, who have almost exsanguinated from lack of exposure to pain, hedonism, and excess, find residence here. Their contorted frames and dull eyes speak to their starvation. They act as predatory beasts, swarming any scrap of emotion or pain. Thus most Drukhari avoid these places, fearing they may catch this affliction themselves. The spires and bladed towers of the old city and High Commorragh lord over Commorragh proper. Within can be found the towers and holdings of the noble houses, most powerful cabals and witch cult arenas. Bladed spires cast shadow over these districts. Scores of slaves clamber over holdings, void docks and spires to raise gargantuan statues of their lords. Cabals and cults find their territories upon one another and within occupied spires. Each and every dark cult or house seeking to extend its dark influence with abject cruelty and disparaging refinement. Skirmishes between the nobility occur within crimson-baked salons of gore, onyx-born galleries of flayed victims and debaucheries of body, mind, and soul. The battles take place through endless indulgence, hedonistic impulse, political sabotage, wordplay, and assassination. Warriors and agents of noble houses, cabals and cults launch raids across arc bridges of onyx and jade with elite Kabbalite agents, incubi bodyguards or witch cults warring in the shadow of monolithic statues, vertical bridges and spires and translucent domes. Due to the vertical nature of these skirmishes and raids, air superiority with Gravskimmer and razor-wing jet fighters is utmost import. Within the microclimates of High Comera, battles through dimensional gateways, acidic rain, vampiric aurora, or ecstatic pheromones are all possible as the clash for power rages on. The witch cults, whilst not having the political power of the Cabals, occupy an essential role in Drukhari society. They provide exhibitions of blood sport and torture, keeping the Drukhari's metaphysical ailment fed and preventing total anarchy. They are led by the succubi, who rule the witch cults, who delight in inviting rival archons to battle. The Hecatari train from near infancy to master martial skills, competing in both the arena and real space in equal measure. The dimensions of Comera steeped in darkness are the most depraved of all. The sprawling dungeons and torture chambers of the homunculus cults, the most macabre of all. They roil beneath and away from High Comera, akin to a vile vine network, reflecting across a dark and mephitic lake. These realms are oppressive corridors of onyx and other damp stone, oft with dark glass or body tissue. Bridges of barbed chains lie over deep pits, where unseen spikes wait to impale unwary travellers. Pits of unwanted corpses abound. Carrion feeders flitter greedily throughout. Ziggurats in any manner, shape and orientation lead those down into spirals of traps laced with toxins to cause the most exquisite agony. Corridors, stairways, and doors made of bone and iron led those wary or unwary enough down into curtains of stitched flesh with hewn maws begging for release. It is only at the center of such horror that the laboratories of the homunculi lie in wait. Craftsmen of agony, they ply their trade with alchemy, dread devices, and vivisection. They fabricate monstrous war constructs and toxins. The walls wail with the suffering of those unlucky enough to find their way into the clutches of these master smiths who act to modify body, allow the birth and propagation of unborn Drukhari, as well as the near resurrection of any Comerite for a portion of their soul, even in the case of grievous bodily harm. The carcasses of slain Drukhari brought before Master Homunculi to begin revivification. The critical element to this unholy restoration is pain. The client's remains thrown into pods fronted with crystal, which lie above torture racks, tables, and other dreadful devices. These entombed Drukhari are hoisted above in concentric circles as the patients absorb the vitality wrought through the suffering of the victims below. An orchestra of pain ringing out, bringing unnatural vitality and resurrection, cultivating bone, connective tissue, fulminant organs, and the sewing of emaciated skin as these regeneration pods clatter with the cacophony of terror underneath. The shadow realm of Elindrach was thought to be once a sub-realm of the ancient Eldari. Now preternatural monsters clamber from the dark to feast on the souls of waiting Drukhari. These shadows are oft antagonistic, rhyming their way toward waiting prey. Amongst the ruins of Elindrach lie the mandrakes who are thought either demon or corrupted Eldari. They may offer eldritch bargains in exchange for abstract gifts within their luminous ponds or glimmering mirrors. Further lost subdimensions and realms lie beyond Elindrach for the bold adventurer. Horrific sentient beings, untouched lost Eldari cities, or even imprisoned star gods may reside here and beyond. Even the cadaverous remnants of the Eldari pantheon have been whispered to lie within the deepest subrealms of the Dark City and beyond. The allure of power and untouched wealth. Power and ventures takes root within Elindrach to mortal adventuring Drukhari, seeking ever more alluring perils and excess. Even Eldari craftworlds, or other Xenos, have been known to brave this realm in the pursuit of their own unknowable agendas. For all the enigmatic and murderous splendor of the Dark City, there is no concentrated ruling organization. There is no notion or thought to be a purpose to such an idea. Some pantomime does exist with Asdrubal Vecht and his cabal of the Black Heart, who have kept Comora in a stranglehold for eons. It is the Archons who rule the disparate cabals, for within Drukhari society, the strong shall inherit the spoils. It is the order that the strong proliferate upon the weak that gives some order to Drukhari society and has prevented total anarchy following the fall. Endless political maneuvering, hedonistic manipulation, martial forays, and even some unification through siring, albeit fleeting or eBay, and flow in the great conflict between cabals. Inquisitor's Log. Designation: Ordo Xenos. Subject: the Dark City. It has recently come to my attention that there has been reports of rogue trader forays into the Dark City. If the tales are to be believed, then this is of grave concern. It is known to be a pit of absolute moral decay, where even the light of the Emperor does not reach. Whilst the writ of trade gives the inalienable right of the most esteemed rogue traders to execute their mission in the manner they deem fit, there can be no quarter for any Xenos, let alone the depraved Drukhari. That Dark City, a pit of hedonism, excess and Xenos filth, its only redeeming quality in the fact that it lies within the webway, and so our forces are oft not to encounter its ilk. It is undoubtedly interesting, however, that a society such as there has managed to find itself in a torrid equilibrium, at least for the moment. Why do we ride atop these elegant craft? The better to hear the screams of our prey as we ride them down, to savour the fear etched on their faces, to taste the tantalizing tang of their blood in the air as an appetizer before the feast. But most of all, we ride them, so that the slaughter may begin as soon as possible. It is when the lividity and splendour of the witch cult arenas can sustain the Comorites no longer that the Drukhari take flight in their trans-dimensional raids. Whilst the Drukhari do not hold standing armies, raiding parties are a common spectacle. These venal and egocentric Drukhari have no care for unity. Rather, they seek the spoils of war and the lavish bloodshed that precedes. Raids may encompass smaller parties of only a few dimensional craft. Anti-grav skimmers and Drukhari warriors emerging from local webway gates all the way to fleets of Drukhari void ships, utilising shadow fields and mimic engines to lie in wait before they strike. There is no commonality between raiding parties aside from a debaucherously savage fury. It is most often the cabals who execute these raids, with ranks of Cabalite warriors striding from attack craft, their Machiavellian archons at the helm. The Hecatari of the witch cults may follow. Homunculi and mercenary covens may all take their fill from the hapless victims of these murderous raids. To plan a real space raid is a venture that may bring weal or woe for the reputation and standing of all involved. Thus, the Drukhari will meticulously plan every eventuality their wicked genius can surmise. Intelligence is gathered, blackmail is undertaken, spy constructs, parasitic infophages, and extra-dimensional scrying are all tools to the scheming Drukhari. To enhance their odds of success, they may deploy hallucinogenic toxins, poisons, devices of preternatural darkness, sabotage and tactics to instill dread within the populace. The malevolent means of the Drukhari know no limit, from poisoning an ailing celestial body and supernatural plagues. They will use whatever means they require within pity or remorse in their goals to sustain their metaphysical ailment and continual needs for further riches. At the time of the attack, the populace will oft be in the throes of abject horror. It is at this moment the Drukhari will launch their assault. They wail from up on high upon darkened craft as they attack from upon high. They will rain out threats using translator technologies and electro-warfare vermids, promising the ecstasy of unbridled anguish. As the raid continues, the Drukhari will feast lavishly on the terror and torment of their victims, all the while suffusing their bodies with unholy vigor. Once they have taken what they require, or at the sight of any threat, they vanish back into the void in a final death blow to any hope for vengeance that the defenders may have wished for. The weapons and tools of torture the Drukhari employ, just like masters, have had eons of continuation development in order to perfect these vices of absolute excess. Whilst the variety of weapons used by the Drukhari are as varied as the cults which call the Dark City home, certain similarities are found between all styles. Almost all are crafted from rare alloy, reinforced polymer resins with master artisans, all seeking to outperform their rivals. Whether this takes the case of the design itself, inlays, macabre manufacturing, or in the actual performance of the device, all seek excess in this craft as any other, whether blade, firearm, or unleashing the designs of unholy science. All weapons of the Drukhari seek to inflict the greatest agony upon their victim before their capture or expiry. Weapons are a form of decadent delight to the Drukhari. They combine enigmatic science in the creation of many ranged weapons. Splinter weaponry fire hails of barbed crystalline shards infused with psychoactive, neuropathic, or necrotic toxins. All Drukhari bask in the exquisite delight of the suffering these toxins inflict before the eventual expiry of their victims. Shredders launch barbed nets of monofilament wire, which restrain their victim as the barbs agonizingly shred them to pieces. Liquefier guns utilized by the homunculus covens extract the hematologic essence of their wielder, siphoning their blood and splattering it in gory fountains of excess imbibed with hypertoxins and corrosive agents. Dark light weapons are the Drukhari answer to hardened targets. They extract energy from black holes and the energy of the immaterium, bringing the two together in a violent interplay, resulting in a catastrophic explosion. Disintegratory weapons channel energy from captured celestial bodies, known as Ilmaya. Haywire blasters utilize channeled electromagnetic interference that induce excruciating neuropathic pain, while heat lanes project devastating energy beams. While the Drukhari wield artisanal ranged firepower with precision, it is the blade that gives the ultimate consummation. It is only where they can drink in the anguish of their victims and watch the fleeting hope escape where Drukhari feel most alive. Power weapons employing molecular disruption fields slice flesh and metal with equal ease. Envenomed blades covered in fenestrated pores excrete toxins to bring total dread to their foe. Lashes use unholy power fields and neuropathic barbs. Myriad, blade, knife, and bayonet are all used to bring pain and terror to the foes of the Drukhari. The rarest of almost all are the Jinn blades, which hold within roiling sentiences that guide the movement of every stroke to utter perfection. Husk blades wrest all moisture from their foe. The front line of most raids are the Kabbalite warriors who make up the bulk of the raiding party. They are utterly violent, depraved, and egotistic, and will fire from up on high with splinter or shredder guns. They oft earn their place through murderous displays or ingenious maneuvering and are led by Sybarites, who are the most ruthless, without peer. Incubi, sadistic mercenaries devoted to the art of murder, are the Maestro Blade Masters. Bodyguards of the Archon, or shock troops, who use clave and dark science-infused war suits in the pursuit of sublime murder. The master of all Kabbalite warriors are the Archon, who are the epitome of all the hedonistic, sadistic, and excessive desire of their species. They lead the real space raiders into battle with the most exquisite weapons and armor, and are the equal of the most adept warriors within real space. They use all that the master artisans of the Dark City can provide, whether this be ranged weapons, blades, or even the soul trap. which is an arcane repository for the soul essence of all the Archon has slain, a cocktail of dark vitality that the Archon will imbibe whenever their physical or spiritual essence wanes. The witches and Hecatari stride into battle with malevolent alacrity, dodging and pirouetting to avoid the panicked hail of ranged fire of their soon-to-be victims. They reach their victims, using knife, whip, hydra gauntlets to rend their foe, all the while imbibing combat and other psychoactive stimulants, bringing their combat prowess to unmatched heights of excess. The ranks of the raiding parties may be bolstered by homunculi ranked by debased racks, scourges upon their feathered pinions and leathery chiropteran wings, the preternatural mandrakes with their ephemeral forms, and the reavers and hellions upon their jet bikes and skyboards in equal measure. The engines of pain hover into battle upon whispering GRV impellers with blade and glittering probushi, bringing agony upon compare. The penultimate is the Talos, a mobile torture chamber of stitched flesh, Xeno's armored plates, and unholy alchemy. It will soak up enemy fire whilst delivering death via hydraulic talon, surgical blade, and meat hooks, while its tail of melded flesh mounts heavy weapon such as heavy liquefiers or haywire blasters to bring exquisite suffering to all. The Kronos is a parasitic engine of pain, which have nests of coiling tentacles and a frontal proboscis, but it is their ability to siphon the life essence from screaming victims that is its true horror. It refines this pain and suffering to suffuse local Drukhari with dark vitality, knitting their wound to continue their debased raids. Where air support is needed, the fighters and bombers cover the raiding parties with streams of heavy splinter fire, dark lance beams, necrotoxin or shatterfield missiles to flash freeze their foes with reckless abandon. In times of true resistance, shockwaves of force field energy compressed into molecule-thin discs found in the monoscythe missiles can be deployed to decapitate entire platoons or enemy armored battalions. Each step they took brought the confused whirl ahead into sharper focus, slowly resolving into what was at once a parody of what had been the Palace of El Uriak and an outraged denial of what had become of it. Its walls reared above them like a giant's castle, decked with kilometre-long banners proclaiming the ascendance of the Emperor of Shardom. Horrid seneschals mounted on strange beasts stood guard before a gate shaped like an open maw. The change in perspective reduced the agents to crawling insects inching below the titanic fortifications as they made for the gate. The seneschals regarded their slow approach with amused disdain. Without doubt, these were demons of the old tales, sinister and beautiful in some lights, but hideously twisted in others. The slender arms terminated in long crab-like claws, and their knowing smiles revealed rows of sharpened fangs. 6 of them sat before the gate upon sinuous bipedal beasts with curiously equine heads that tasted the air with obscenely long pink tongues. As the agents came closer, the demons chattered excitedly among themselves in a dark tongue that hurt the ears and seemed to brand the air with its eldritch tones. One more supremely hideous and beautiful than the others spurred her mount forwards and called out in a honeyed travesty of the ancient Eldar tongue. "Welcome, brothers and sisters," the thing said. "You've chosen to cast aside those tiresome bonds of mortality and join us at last. Your coming will be exalted until the stars burn out. A billion slaves will scream your praises for all eternity." The agents felt joy at the warmth and friendship in the thing's words, and at the thrilling secret promise that lay beneath every syllable. Moore's voice croaked unpleasantly by comparison, filled with doom and woe. "Our business is with El Uriak, and not for the likes of you. Stand aside and let us pass," the incubus intoned. The demon licked its fangs lasciviously. "I think not. One of you must remain with us for our mutual satisfaction, and know that once you enter the palace, you will not be permitted to leave it under any circumstances." The agents glanced around at one another, wondering who might be chosen, and Kabir took an excited half-step forwards before Moore's grating voice halted him. "I will not bargain with you, demon," the incubus said. His words were still hanging in the turgid air when his 2-meter blade flicked out like a serpent's tongue. The demon's headless mount began collapsing, almost unraveling as the energies holding it together flew apart. Moore neatly caught the demon on his outstretched weapon as it fell forwards and flung its thrashing, disintegrating shape into the path of its compatriots as they spurred in to attack. The glamour of the demon's words fell away as violence flared. Ziriad's shredder immediately puffed out a cloud of harmless-looking gossamer strands that carved apart one charging mount and rider as if they had run headlong into a wall of rotating blades. Sindiel's blaster burped out a gob of emerald fire that ate straight through another demon. Ez Ashya and Kabir leapt forwards to fight off the questing tongues of the mounts and the flashing claws of their riders. An obscene tongue wrapped around Kabir's ankle, writhing up his leg like a constricting snake. The pain of his recent wound rekindled into an incandescent ecstasy that made him howl like an animal. Ayasha's knives lashed out and cut him free. The sellsword rolled on the ground, moaning as the succubus stood over him, with her blades carving a protective web. Moore's blade crashed through another mount and rider in a single stroke, just as Ez Ashya's knives slashed across an equine face and sent a mount rearing backwards. A cloud of monofilament strands from Ziriad's shredder engulfed a demon rider before it could bring its mount back under control. Kabir recovered sufficiently to redeem some shred of his ego by shooting the last demon in the face. Psychically infused splinters from his pistol cratered its head as if it were made of soft clay, the demon collapsing into a cloud of sickly sweet vapor. Moore dispatched the remaining riding beasts with economic sweeps of his great blade. "Demons!" Moore spat with contempt. "Come, we must move on. They will soon reconstitute themselves and return with others." He turned and vanished into the shadows that clustered within the Moore-like gate. "You never even considered accepting their bargain?" asked Sindiel as he hurried after the disappearing incubus. "Demons always lie," Moore said with finality. "But Drukhari, we speak with pain, with torment, with excess, and pain does not lie."